Hello and welcome to the First Majority podcast. My name's Mark Devlin and I'm here with my co-host Niall. Say something, Niall.
Hi, I'm Niall Fraser. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm sure this is a very eagerly anticipating the very first Majority podcast. I'm delighted to be here. Delighted to start
That's
dismantling
great.
the nationalist cause.
That's right. And so we'll be talking about a few different things tonight. We have sex surveys in schools. We have our nationalists. Can socialists really be nationalists or nationalists really be socialists? Vice versa. We're also going to look at what else? What else have you got?
So we've got soldiers arriving in Aberdeen in the midst of I think it's going on 6 days, no power. If you can imagine, if you have got a family and there's no power, there's no internet, it'll be pandemonium in the house. So my heart goes out to these people. So and like you said, we were talking about these questionnaires that went out to schools and the sort of mini council rebellion. We were talking about that.
Okay, so that's all going to be coming in just a second after these amazing and fantastic. And here we are. So we'll fix that for next week. And please expect numerous technical issues as we go along. This is our first attempt. We're glad to have you with us, and you can join in the stream. We have a chat system. If you can chat on YouTube chat. That's and we can highlight your comments as well. So without any further ado, we'll just get on to the first topic of the day, which is going to be Niles.
So we're going to be talking about the questionnaires that went out to schools. So this is something that I've been sort of tackling for the last 6 months at least, where there seems to be questions of a graphic nature going to school kids, and it's tough to talk about. It really is. Questions about anal sex, penetrative sex, and bear in mind that this is going out to 14-year-olds, potentially young. Oh, I don't think younger, but they say it's 14 and up, and it's really quite a devastating thing to talk about. If I was a parent, I would be very happy with that. I would be questioning why it was even in the schools in the first place. There's just so many questions to ask about this. And, Megan Gallagher had a question for the presiding officer that she didn't manage to get it asked today, but hopefully we can read it out later on, just to see that there are politicians out there fighting against this sort of thing happening in the schools. And we have had some councils sort of cease its distribution. So Fife Council, I think today, said they will cease this questionnaire going out to schools. I'm pretty sure North Lanarkshire said no. So that's two confirmed councils that will not be issuing this questionnaire.
And you said that this Megan Gallagher brought it up in the Scottish Parliament today?
No, she failed to bring it up. So she didn't have time to answer a question, but she posted her written question. If you scroll down her feed, you'll see how her written question, and I'll just read it out for the viewers. So, can you blow that up a wee bit, Mark? Thanks.
Oh, I think that's as big as it's going to get.
Right, so the Scottish Government...
You want me to read it? It's easy.
Please.
Yeah, it says the Scottish Government sent this health and wellbeing census to all councils throughout Scotland that asks pupils to answer questions relating to sexual health and drugs. Some of the questions, just basically what you said, that they were asking about their sexual experience and so on. And Megan Gallagher says, First Minister, would you feel comfortable answering these questions? Now, that is quite a question in itself.
That is a great question.
Of course, First Minister doesn't have children of her own, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing in any way, but parents certainly would have an issue with this type of stuff being sent to schools. I know that if this came to my child came back with this, they're a little bit past school age now, but if they had come back with something like this, then I would be contacting the school and having a word with them, trying to find out what's on, because basically should be no business of the schools or the governments what children are up to. In fact, even asking these questions, to my perspective, is perhaps a form of abuse in a way.
I mean, I would say that there's already a fair amount of backlash over this. The fact that some council areas have just decided that they're not going to do it screams to me that there's been a lot of parents contact schools, say, no, I'm not happy with this. Please stop. So I can imagine it's quite hundreds of parents across the country, maybe breaching into the thousands. But the more you look into this, the more sort of insidious it becomes. And you see the headline in the Evening Telegraph on the left: parental advisory, explicit content revealed the sex questions authorities want. Was it your kids to answer, your children to answer? It's just, I mean, what world do we live in?
Yeah, I mean, it does make you wonder. I mean, there does seem to be quite a sexual emphasis by the Scottish government on about these sexual issues, and I think most people, I don't know, I feel a lot of people would just be like, well, why do you want to know this information? What is it?
Yes.
What are you tracking here, really, and what's the purpose of it? And I think it makes people feel quite uncomfortable in general. Now, I'm not a social conservative by any means. So I would generally say that I have a fairly liberal agenda in that sense, but I don't think it's something that we really should be dealing with, inside our schools.
No, I think that's. I mean, that question. I mean, it should be between parents and their children. I think that should be made very clear. It shouldn't be with school teachers. It's just no right.
Right.
I've
Okay.
got a really bad feeling about this. But moving
So you
on
can
before we
we
get
feel
caught in the weeds.
if you've got something to say about it, feel free to talk on the chat, and we can highlight any chat messages that come up. We have had one so far, so let me see.
You want to say what it says?
Yes, yes, through the SNP. So there we go. That's our first comment so
so
far. So
we
go ahead.
we would want some maximum interaction. I mean, the more comments we get, the better. And I will endeavour to read every single comment, and I'll answer them if it's the right question. We just want maximum input, maximum, interaction with you, the viewers. That's what we're trying to achieve.
Right. Okay. So hold on. Is this the right one? Let's go. And that gives us a wee chance to reset the screens and what have you. So next up, we're going to talk about yesterday's poll. And that was quite something. Nationalists got all excited about a poll that said there was 55% support for independence. So what do you think of that, Niall?
Well, I think it's obviously cherry picked. From what I've seen, I mean, it did sort of blow up on Twitter. What I've seen was the fact that people said that they polled over 50% of them were of nationalist voting parties. So
Yeah, I heard it was 59%.
it's to be expected. A result like this is to be expected. So, I mean, again, it's gamesmanship. It's manipulating statistics. It's just, I mean, picking and choosing
It does
who you
surprise me,
poll.
though. I mean, the thing about this poll is it's a real outlier, right? Because if we look at we can look at the polls, the recent polls in Wikipedia, and probably you can't really see this all that well on your screen, but basically we've got about 20 polls here, which are when the question is asked, should Scotland be an independent country, which of course is extremely biased question in its own right. Then and most of them you can see there are like in the, what's this, 46, 47%, and so on. It's not very good results really. And then all of a sudden, massive jump up to this, in this case, 52% with undecideds, 4% undecideds. So it just seems very strange. And when you look at the actual the, the thing that what surprises me is that these are professional polling companies, and surely they should be able to weight their polls properly. You'd think that they would go out and ask people. They get the number of people from the last previous election or whatever it is that support a particular party, and then they ask that number in proportion to the poll that they're asking. That doesn't make much sense, perhaps, but to ask the questions to people in proportion to the parties they voted in previously. So,
I mean, generally, I've not got that much faith in polling companies in general.
Well, we ran an article on that where we did 6 ways in which nationalists manipulate polls, and one of the first one was to choose the polling company that gives you the best result. Of course, you're paying for the result. I mean, if I was running a poll, and you can quote me in this later, it would be the same thing. I would choose the one that's going to give me the best result, because what I'm trying to polls are basically for propaganda. And I think we all know this.
Yep.
So, and we can see the result of that today and yesterday, I should say, on Twitter, particularly, and social media, where the nationalists are being energised. For months and months, we haven't heard hardly anything from them at all. And yesterday, they were all like, "Oh yes, Boris Johnson's going to give us a referendum," and and stuff like that. And it's like it's a big wave, a tsunami of delusion. Comes in, and you're like, okay, so someone woke you up, but you're still in a dream, as it were. So it's that's, I don't actually understand what the purpose is, because there isn't really, there if we go by the trend, there isn't any popular will. Sturgeon's popularity is declining by the minute. She's seen as tired, tetchy, a bit of a control freak, not a bit. And so it's causing a lot of, I think people are just tired people naturally get tired of politicians, however great they may think they are, first of all. That's why we have elections every 4 years. So if a politician stays too long, it can be really a challenge. And I think her popularity is on the decline. You can look at the marches, you can look at all this stuff, and then they come up with this poll, and you're like, well, who's it really for?
And why is it commissioned now? We're supposed to be in a recovery from a pandemic. Why is it? Why did it feel like now is the time to release? Whoa! Look at this poll; it's 55%. It's desperation, is what it is. That's what I'm feeling from this poll. It's desperation. It's cherry picked. And amidst when Nicola's popularity is going off a cliff, we get this independence poll. Lo and behold, it just makes me sick.
Yeah,
not physically, mentally ill.
Well, it's very challenging. I mean, we see it every day. I think that like Twitter is like the coalface, in a way. You're like mining away to see what's going on, and you're fighting with people, and they have been very quiet, but there's nothing new. I think that's what it comes down to for me. There's nothing new in the agenda. It's not like we've got this poll that 55% people say they want independence, and we're doing something about it tomorrow. It's like, what are they going to do about it? There's nothing there's nothing to do.
Well, if you
there's
look
no path to a second referendum. That's my favorite, almost favorite expression. There's no way for them to get a second referendum.
So you mentioned the marches. The marches when it was like 70 odd people there and the dog. And it's just laughable, and yet this poll comes out and it's 55%. I mean, it does not compute. Does not compute for me.
Yeah, here's the marchers here.
Yeah.
I mean, basically,
brace yourself for the stampede of people.
There's 72 people apparently in this, and this guy says there's one dog, and I know someone said to me, "Well, there's another 2 dogs in there," and I said, I wrote back saying, "Well, those 2 ones aren't nationalists; they're just along there
Yep.
for the walk."
Yep.
Yes, but this is the extent of this thing, and they're trying to say to us that there's 55% who are looking for who like independence. Of course, that gets us back to the whole idea of the question and the idea that independence is something noble to strive for, and I think people, it's great marketing, as it were, but the reality is an entirely different matter. I think we'll go into this obviously a lot more as time goes on.
Yeah.
But for now, we're just trying to, in our first excursion, I
maiden
suppose.
broadcast.
Yeah, it's just trying to figure out the format a little bit, try to figure out what we're trying to do, see how this technology works, and just do what we can, I suppose. Again, if you've got comments, please just chat, put them in. You can just say hi, and we'll give you a shout out.
We'll ask the best
so
one. We'll read out the best ones.
That's it, right.
Right,
Okay,
so we're moving
so
swiftly on.
we're going to let's do the. You start this time now.
Oh, right, okay. So we've talked about the questionnaires in schools, but now we want to talk about 6 days without power. I mean, what would your life look like, Mark?
Oh, I've had some time without power before.
I mean, it would be
In the
nostalgic, maybe,
1970s, when we all had to sit around
candles,
with
board
candles
games,
and stuff like that. This is the winter
6
of
coats. It would be quite nostalgic for some people, but I can imagine the sort of Gen Z kids growing up will be apoplectic with rage. There is no internet. They would be escaping Aberdeen in this power outage. You would be driving out to the nearest Wi-Fi. I just think, and the fact that this has been allowed to happen, right? Imagine leaving people 6 days with no power. That's a couple more days, and it could get really quite grim. If you
Yeah, I
think
think,
about
I
it, it
mean,
could be
I
quite
think it's fine.
desperate.
You're talking about young people and what have you, right? But they're not really at risk. I mean, they're
Yeah,
risking
that's
boredom
true.
from not having their Game Boy on or whatever. But we're talking about the elderly, people who can't get out and about, disabled, and so on. People who live alone, and what's going to happen to them? I mean, the thing that was shocking to me about this was that Nicola, took, I mean, I think 3 or 4 days to respond to it. I mean, it's just really
3 or 4 days is unacceptable. And at a time of crisis, she should be there day one. She should be in a wee helicopter up to Aberdeen, try to sort of fix the situation out.
Oh, of course. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, and not just that, the government, such as it is,
Yeah.
should be
Is
directed
there no
to work
emergency
towards it.
provisions? Was there any plans in place for such an event? We knew the storm was coming, so
Yes.
why do we not have a backlog of engineers waiting ready? There should have been so much more planning on this. It's just it's ineptitude again. They're more concerned about playing politics than actually running the country.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
you're right about old people. It could actually have resulted in a death or two. And an old woman might have to go to the coal bunker, load up the coal fire again.
well, I mean, make a campfire in your living room. I mean, when we were we lived in Florida for quite a while, and we used to have a full emergency kit in case there was a hurricane, and what have
In
you.
case your home got
And but they never had a
obliterated.
problem. Never really had a problem with the weather there, I have to say, in the sense of being cold. But quite often we'd have power out. The power would go out for days on end because the trees were down and stuff like that. We have to cook in a range and all this type of stuff. It's a big stress for people. When they can't do the basic things. You
Yep.
turn the microwave on. Heat up a ready meal, and you actually you're back to cooking in a campfire.
Well,
Anyway.
I remember watching there was some video coming up about it, and the woman says, "We've just bought all our Christmas shopping, and now we put it in the freezer, and what happened? No
Right.
power, no freezer, it's all gone.
Like all
So, I
ruined
mean,
their
it's got
Christmas.
wider ramifications. It's got economic ramifications and stuff. So, it is quite a prospect for a lot of people. It's not great, is it?
No, I think it's just a general malaise that we have in this so-called government in Scotland, that they're so busy trying to take selfies and make PR opportunities and to talk about their pet topic, which is, of course, independence. Um,
Yes.
and instead of actually doing the things that are required to govern the country, I think basically, we have a person at the top, Nicola Sturgeon, who is very competent at PR and getting her face in the newspapers and getting
Hmm.
close to celebrities, reading books and what have you. But what we actually need are competent people, competent ministers, people from the top down who can actually do their job and who can actually go and visit. First of all, understand that these issues are going to happen, and then make preparations for them, and then from there actually to deal with them. Now, of course, you can't always have perfect government. In fact, you don't always never have perfect government performance, but at least have some performance.
Hmm.
What do you think?
Well, once again, the British soldiers have come to save us again. So that's twice in the last sort of 2 to 3 months that British soldiers have been drafted in because of the failures of the Scottish government. We can't do ambulances. Bring in the army. We need them. Uh, we can't fix the power outage. We need the army. Uh, each of these things is an advertisement for the union that they want to ruin. It's,
Yes, it's
they keep shooting
it's
themselves in the foot.
yeah. I mean, they just can't deal with their own stuff. So
Mhm.
Big Brother, as it were, has to come in and sort things out for them. Another disaster. Again, we're looking for your comments. Don't be shy. This is new for us, and if making comments is new for you too, then we'll understand that as well. So moving on, we're going to come up to the fourth item, and then we're going to bring in our special guest, David Griffiths, who we should have mentioned earlier on, and he's going to talk about another nationalist personality making a fool of themselves. And then after that, we have our final segment, which is the Zoomer of the week, where the three of us will discuss all that. So we'll be back in a second.
Right.
Right now, what have you got? What's the last thing on the agenda?
The
Oh no, it's
last
mine.
one, you were
No,
going
it's
to
mine.
talk about Neil
Actually.
Mackay and the sort
Yeah,
of
I'm going to talk
weird.
about Neil. Exactly.
Can you be socialist and nationalist at the same time?
Yeah, I mean it's a pet topic of mine.
What happened
Really,
the last time? Yeah.
yeah, it's a bit of an issue here. We have a strain of journalists who have been boosting nationalism for the past God knows how many years. I mean, at least a decade anyway, if not longer. And yet they're turning around all the time and saying to us, "No, I'm not a nationalist." And the we have I can name at least three of major journalists to start with, and every day I see Twitter bios and social media accounts that say socialist, why want an independent Scotland? And I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't really make much sense to me. So let's have a look at what Mr. Mackay said. I'll try and get his
Mhm.
things together. I don't know where it is. Here, okay. Now again, it's a bit small. I need to get a wee thing to improve this. Okay.
There we go.
Now, ostensibly, this article is about. He's actually saying at the end of it, the cause of independence is not worth the destruction of the NHS under the SNP. So, in a way, he's kind of saying, I don't really like the SNP and what they're doing. They're actually behaving like a right wing party trying to privatise the NHS. Now, that's an entirely separate issue that we can go into later, whether the SNP are actually socialists or not. I mean, basically, I guess to say it very quickly, they are a bit of a grab bag. They'll take anyone who wants to protest. against the Westminster government. But at the beginning of this article, we have quite a few sections where I've underlined and read. I'll have to look in a wee bit closer to my computer here. And he says, for me, as someone who hopes that I'm a moderate, considered yes voter, and further down, I'm not a nationalist. I hate nationalism in all its stripes, British and Scottish, although I'm pretty certain he can't actually define how British nationalism is a thing
Differs.
that is directed against the Scots. Then further down, the UK is irreparable. So with no alternative to improvement, independence offers one possible path. So, and he talks about how here, I believe it can create a better country, especially for those at the bottom of the pile. Now, I don't know how getting rid of,
I mean,
massive
it's
debt,
just so wrong. I mean, it's just
the massive
so
deficit
wrong.
would help. So, I mean, here we have a person, a journalist who basically is saying a bunch of things that don't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, he says he's a moderate supporter of independence. How can you be a moderate supporter of something that's binary?
It's a binary, yeah. It's yes or
Right.
no.
It's a yes or no. When it comes down to it, you're either for it or you're against it. You're not kind of half for it. It doesn't work that way. So
Maybe it's like that recent poll, 55% yes. 45% no. Yeah, it is a binary choice. It doesn't make any sense.
It's a binary choice. He's either for it or against it. And that means then he says, I'm not a nationalist. Well, why does he have to protest so much that he's not a nationalist? Because is nationalism bad? I mean, that sounds like nationalism is a terrible thing, really.
Yep.
British and Scottish nationalism is a terrible thing. Yet, just not one sentence later, he's saying, I support an independent Scotland. Now, how are you going to get an independent Scotland? Can you get an independent Scotland through the Tory party? No. Can you get an independent Scotland through the Labour Party? No, because they are, they support all the workers of the UK and the pooling and sharing that is across all the UK. So there's no path through Labour, which is a socialist party, and there's no path through Tories, of course, nor the Lib Dems. There's only one path, and that's through nationalist governments, nationalist parties. And so basically, if he wants an independent Scotland, he has to support a nationalist party. And I'm pretty certain he's been supporting the SNP all along, right? So how can he come out now and say, I'm not a nationalist, when he's been supporting it all along? And then he's going, he's crying, oh, the NHS is a disaster. We're crying. Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. Well, you voted for it, mate. I mean, you voted for it.
Yep.
So, and then I don't mind that if you say, look, I voted for it and it's a mess. Fair enough.
Yep.
But I voted for it. It's a mess, and I'm not a nationalist. It's like, come on, really. Just if you really don't like nationalism, stop being a nationalist. That's straightforward. It's not like who's going to be upset at him? Like, is he going to go to his journalist pal and say, "Oh my God, I've given up nationalism"? It's like
they'll be kicked out of their wee club, their wee coffee meetings in the morning.
I know. Well, maybe that's that. In fact, probably that's the problem. Kicked out his wee club of the other ones who are all doing the same thing. So, really, I mean, it just tires me out. Like seeing this kind of stuff. It's so much. This is people who should really know better. One of the commentators said, people hate Tories so much, right, that they'll do anything to try and be against them, and that's what's happened. They're doing anything, and that means abandoning the socialist principles, sharing, putting a hard border up, saying that people from Liverpool, Glasgow are different. That's not socialism. That really isn't. That's nationalism, and it's ugly, and it's vile, and it's something that we need to turn our backs on. And the sooner people like Neil Mackay and the other ones who we'll get into probably later in this series get their act together and start to realise that the thing that they voted for is causing the problems in Scotland today, then
it's going to be quite a nasty wake-up, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you can see this. It's like you can see the cognitive dissonance going on with this guy here. It's like,
I know.
It's all in the page, and so
well, it pays the bills, I'm sure.
Well, it's a certain point, though. I mean, it's not at a certain point. You just have to people have to bite the bullet, I guess.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So moving on, we're going to bring
Special
in
guest
David Griffiths, and we hope to have different special guests or regular special guests or whatever it is as we go along. Not really decided what we're doing yet. So we'll be back in a second with that.
Special guests.
Special guest. Where's the wee button? Okay. Oops.
David.
Well, hello there. Hello, David.
Good evening, Mark. Good evening, Niall. How are we?
I'm very well. Thanks for asking. How are you? Are you standing?
I'm seated. I am in. I'm a guest in someone's house this evening. I've had to come down to very close to where I used to live for the weekend, so I'm here, and I've had to borrow some technical equipment. So forgive me for the poor quality, but here I am in substance anyway.
Brilliant.
Well, it's good to have you with us, and so sorry to make you wait a little bit to come on, but we hope it's worth it. So, what have you got for us today?
Well, I've been looking at some rather extraordinary stuff that's happened this week, and I couldn't help but notice Keth Brown of the SNP, I think is the Justice Minister, I believe that's right. It's certainly the Deputy SNP leader. He came up with some absolute pearlers at the weekend during the hugely well-attended SNP conference. I'm sure they only had a conference a couple of months ago, but maybe they felt they needed another one. I don't know. Anyway, good old Keith came up with one of the phrases of the year for me, which is that Scotland needs independence to invest in our bountiful renewable energy resources, which are the envy of Europe, and it's the future of our planet depends on it. And it's too important to be left to the Tories. So he's got a good idea, but we're going to leave the future of the planet up to the SNP instead, because they've got such an impeccable record of running Scotland. So let's just put them in charge of the whole world, because that's bound to work, isn't it, guys? So that was a cracker, and then he came up with another one later on, which appealed to me even more so, which was we need to reach out to voters, undecided voters, by being tolerant, kind, inclusive, open, honest, and engaged. Great. What will be a first for all of them from the SNP? Unless they find some Tories or some English people in, all that stuff goes straight out the window, of course, you know. So it's just the same old hogwash from the SNP as ever, guys. So very, very frustrating, very annoying. But yeah, that's what came across my radar this week.
Brilliant.
Well, I mean, do you think that Scotland really could lead the world in anything? Particularly, I mean, what are we leading the world in? We're leading the world in drug deaths, perhaps Colombia, or I mean, I haven't actually looked at the drug deaths in Colombia or whatever, but I'm pretty certain there are maybe some other countries that could be worse. But in Europe, then that's certainly not the case. So we can be leading the world, and sadly, I should say, it's not something to celebrate in any way. Of course, such statistics. It annoys me a little bit when we see this kind of Scottish exceptionalism. It's a little bit like, well, if we just showed the rest of the world how to act, if we just behaved really great and we did all the sacrifices and we did, put on a hair shirt, then everyone else will do that. You know, most people in the world, first of all, they don't know anything about Scotland, and Scotland is, it's just a fact. It's not a big country, and it's not that even with COP26, it wasn't a leader in that. And even somewhat ridiculously, until Nicola Sturgeon changed her tune a few weeks ago, we were known for being an oil and gas producing country.
Absolutely, and even further than that, Mark. Of course, Nicola Sturgeon, as you know, came into politics because of her visceral hatred, her deep-seated hatred of Margaret Thatcher, whose crime was to close down coal mines. And now, of course, Nicola Sturgeon detests coal mining. So does this mean Margaret Thatcher was ahead of her time, or does it mean that Nicola Sturgeon was on any passing bandwagon? That's what I'd like to know. So, so does that mean that should there be a re-evaluation? Should there be some revisionism as regards Margaret Thatcher's reign? It'd be really interesting to hear what Nicola Sturgeon thinks about, in hindsight, Margaret Thatcher's decision. Not that it was solely her decision, Margaret Thatcher being in charge at the time, under her stewardship, that many of the coal mines were closed. But of course, we know that there were more coal mines closed under the Labour government. So there's just nothing but contradiction in everything that the SNP say and everything that they stand for. And they literally will attach themselves to any passing fad to try to make the case for Scottish independence. And as you said, Neil Mackay stuff, I mentioned this last week in conversation with another group. Neil Mackay hates nationalism, particularly Scottish and British nationalism. I wonder how he feels about Irish nationalism, Northern Irish nationalism. Interesting that Neil Mackay didn't mention that, but hey, maybe we should press him on that one day. But so this is the thing. To me, everything about the SNP is contradiction, it's hypocrisy, and it's basically lies. And people in Scotland don't like being lied to. They certainly don't like being lied to by people who have got far greater material wealth and material, I guess, items than they have. And that's just not going to last. So we all know it's going to stop one day. It's just a matter of when. And we're doing everything we can to try and hasten this end. Good people, listeners, viewers. So bear with us while we try.
Yes, God bless you, David.
So
God bless you, sir.
A shout out for James from the Majority Voice. No relation to us.
Hi, James. I interact with James a lot on Twitter.
A good supporter of our Majority. I don't know if he had the Majority before us, probably, or not. I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, it's plenty of room for everyone to get part of this. So next, without further ado, we're going to move on to our final segment, which is, and just check out this really amazing graphic I made for Zoomer of the Week.
Oh.
That's what I managed to come up with in 5 minutes. So I think as we go forward, we hope improving some of our graphics and tweaking, let's say, format and trying to improve what we've got. So I take it, David, that you'll give Keith Brown the Zoomer of the Week.
Yeah, I think he would get my vote simply because, I mean, there's nothing like chutzpah, as they say, and certainly he was delivering it in spades, thinking that the future of the planet depends on Scotland's extraction or capability with renewable resources. That is a new one. That has got to be the most absurd phrase ever uttered by a nationalist in recent weeks. So I would nominate Mr. Brown for Zoomer of the Week from me. Yes.
Well, certainly bullshit extraction would be, he's a master at that. I think so. Yes. Okay. Now you've got a Zoomer of the Week.
Yes, my Zoomer of the Week is Nicola Sturgeon. Just going straight to the head of the snake. She had, Anis Sarwar this week has been on fire. So he's been attacking what I think the most critical thing that the Queen Elizabeth, the Sick Kids Hospital or the Royal Infirmary, and there's been people die from having infections born out of the hospitals. So, and Nicola didn't even have the bravery to show up to the debate. She didn't even show up. It's disgusting. It's despicable. She can't face the music. A big boy done it and ran away, and then she'll be in there next week when there's no much on, and all will be forgotten about in this 24-hour news cycle. We need to keep pressing her, keep asking her the exact same question over and over again until it gets answered. So Nicola Sturgeon is my Zoomer of the Week.
Well, that's that's a perennial favourite, really. I think.
Sorry, by the way. Is Nicola Sturgeon allowed to be picked?
Yeah, I mean, it's that's she's always going to be in there, I would guess. In any case, I mean, I'm going to go for Ian Blackford in the House of Commons this week, wasting the Commons time on a debate about Boris Johnson's salary.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not actually too sure whether that's why I wanted him to have demerit for his performance. Now, Yeah, I mean, I think people may think whether they feel Boris is doing a good job or not, and that's a bit debatable at the moment. I mean, the actual that a party of 59 people out of 650 is really but taking the mickey by wasting everyone's time and these type of things. What do you think of that, David?
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. I mean, I find Blackford's weekly grandstanding just to be utterly sickening. I really have grown to detest the very sight of that man and the sound of his voice. You can hear the groans of "oh, not again" all across the chamber from all sides when he gets to his feet. And I think it's becoming increasingly difficult for him to get to his feet because, my goodness, his girth is becoming more expansive.
I was about to say the creaking of the benches. You can hear the creaking of the benches.
He stands up and the house tips to one side. He's like, hang, that's going to be safe, guys. But no, I detest everything he says. This is a man who, of course, we know this man has earned hundreds of thousands of pounds in his extracurricular activities, shall we say. And one of the SNP lackeys said the other week when challenging this, oh yes, but Ian Blackford has shown leadership by giving up those jobs. Leadership. Right, okay. Is there anything these guys have ever done wrong? Will they ever contribute to anything? It's just utterly ludicrous.
I mean, Ian Blackford's a great pick, to be fair. I think he does Scotland a disservice doing what he does. Yep. He wastes Scotland's time in Westminster all day. Every time he's there, he's wasting our time, and he's doing a disservice to Scots. I mean, what would the English think he is? Is this the best we've got to offer? Is Ian Blackford really asking the same questions?
Well, I think it's part of a policy of trying to bore and certainly bore the rest of the UK into saying we've had enough of Sturgeon and Blackford and the like, and let them free. So I'm continuously writing comments to people who actually say that kind of thing on various newspaper bulletin boards and comment sections, whatever. And I say, look, Scotland is the only place in the UK that has that voted to remain in the UK, and we could the anti-nationalist majority, that's us, could really do with your support against the nationalist minority. And it's really tiresome to see that do you want to give Nicola Sturgeon what she wants? She's trying to get, all you're doing by saying cut Scotland free is giving nationalists what they want and the nationalist minority what they want, and that's really not acceptable. So we have to keep always making that case.
Quite. I mean, just to pick up on that, Mark, I can remember speaking to a very prominent Conservative MP about a year ago, and I'd said to him, because he was my constituency MP previously when I lived down where I am now. And I said to him, are you guys aware of, the potential looming constitutional crisis? And if so, what's the view among your colleagues, your Conservative colleagues? And he said, yes, we're aware of it. But, to a lot of people, really, the view is, well, if they really want to go, let's just let them go. And I said, are you serious? I hope you put them right in that. He said, oh, yes, of course. But there was an element of, I think he meant it, to be honest. I think he was probably describing quite accurately what the sentiment is down there in Westminster. They probably think, well, if it means that much to you, why don't you just get lost? The fact is that we, as we know, these people, the nationalists, the separatists, do not speak for the people of Scotland at all. They might win elections because of a vague sense of disquiet, but that's it. People in Scotland don't want to be independent at all. I don't accept that. And so I at the end of the conversation with him, he was very much, okay, I hear what you're saying, yes, and I will continue to make the case that, yes, obviously Scotland should remain part of the UK, because, as we always say, Mark, that's all we're talking about. We're simply talking about stopping people from breaking up the country. That's what we're discussing here. It's nothing about independence or freedom or anything else. It's the country being broken apart, and we will not have it. We will not allow it.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. We seem to have lost Niall. I'm not too sure why. Maybe his has some issue with his camera, but I think between the two of us, then we can have a vote. I noticed here we've got a comment on screen from Jill Stevenson. She says, "I'm with David. Keith Brown is a Zoomer of the week." So
well said, Jill. Thank you very much. The wonderful Jill.
as that is that makes it conclusive, I guess. So another comment from Jill here. We've got this SNP wants to second English to the extent they tell us to sod off. Well, we definitely know that, and we have to do our best to resist that, unfortunately. And the good thing, of course, is that most people in the rest of the UK really have a good feeling for the Scottish people, and despite nationalists, just have a good feeling for the Scottish people and for Scotland in general. And we should never let them nationalists say that they either speak for Scotland or that they will make Scotland into something that isn't. Anyway, okay, so I think thanks, David, for coming on today. I'd like to wrap up by saying thank you to Niall, to David, to Jill and other people who have put in their comments today. But we also have a big thank you to our donors who made this possible with microphones and lighting. And for myself and Niall, and David's going to get some. Of David's away from his home base at the moment. It's been really great to have your support. I think this first podcast has gone not too badly. When we hope as we go forward next week, we should be able to improve and get more people involved. And that's a big part of what we're trying to do now with the majority, is to get more people involved in this. We have organising meetups, we've got this podcast, we've got some other projects on the go, and we need more and more people to get involved. So if you feel like getting involved, then please do get in contact with us through our Twitter or email. Mine is mark@themajority.scot. So I suppose that just about wraps it up then. So thanks again, and I guess that's done. All right, so I don't have a final titles thing, but I do have a wee thank you message. So, all right, good night.
Well, Mark, thanks very much. Cheers, everyone. Speak soon.
Thank you. Bye now. Is it going to do it?